Dr. Acton, it has been 15 long years since
Mhm.
the great state of Ohio had a Democratic governor,
Yeah.
since Ted Strickland. Tell us what's going on in this
Mhm.
really crucial state in the Midwest? Um, how are people responding to your campaign?
Yeah.
And what kind of a year do you think it's going to be for Democrats there?
Well, thank you. We have such good news to share from Ohio. Yes, we just had our primary night, and it really reflected what I've been seeing on the ground all along. I have been going everywhere in the state of Ohio, quite frankly, places Dems haven't been in a while,
Mm.
listening deeply. And everywhere we've gone, we've seen record crowds of people showing up. It does not know party. Oftentimes, it includes people who have never been to anything political before. And everywhere we go, people are exhausted. They're feeling the weight of how expensive everyday life is. So they're definitely feeling the weight of the policies that are happening and its toll on their everyday life. And they're also exhausted of the hate and the chaos, the vitriol. They're tired of being pitted against one another and family members and neighborhoods. And they are longing for us to be public servants again, who actually solve problems instead of making them. So we saw this record turnout on primary night. We learned just recently that we had more votes, and we had already cleared the primary, so we had no opponent. We had more votes than any candidate for governor on either side of the aisle in all of Ohio recorded history. I think it goes back to 1942. And that's what we're seeing everywhere, this movement for change.
Well, your opponent is Vivek Ramaswamy, who
Yeah,
briefly ran Doge for President Trump.
that's right.
He's a tech billionaire, and he has been jetting around in his private jets. He has more money than God. How do you compete with that,
Yeah.
knowing that it's going to be impossible to raise as much money as him?
Well, we've known all along we're up against a self-funding billionaire plus. Um, but what we recognized very early on is that the people are ready for change. Ohio was always known as the bellwether of the country for many years, right up until the era we're in now with President Trump. The old saying on Meet the Press was, as goes Ohio, so goes the nation. That's actually what I think we are going to see. I think Ohio is ground zero of this fight. It's no longer about Democrat or Republican or independent. It is about extreme wealth, power, special interest, and ideology being funneled through playbooks into states, particularly state houses. And quite frankly, most of us don't always pay attention. We pay attention to federal. We know what's going on locally. But it is the black box of these state houses where all the bad stuff has been happening. You add a supermajority, you add some gerrymandering, and that is what we have in Ohio. But where I grew up in Ohio was Youngstown, Ohio, the stuff of Bruce Springsteen songs. And, we growing up did not know what party anyone was. We knew maybe what union they belonged to. It's a steel town, We knew what food you made from the country you came from. And you just had the sense of people would have your back. Youngstown, like all of Ohio, went twice for Obama, then they went Trump, and now people are ready for change because they are struggling to afford to live in a state that was always known for its affordability. I'm running for governor because people in this state are struggling. They're doing everything right. And I like my opponent who says we are, struggling because we're lazy and mediocre and not working hard enough, famously got kicked out of Doge for saying those words, something he helped make. I don't know how you do that. He says affordability is just a buzzword that people are using. That is not the Ohioans I meet. People are doing everything right, and they just can't make it all work. The math doesn't add up. And so that's what I think. We're seeing a movement of people. We actually have outraised. We've set records every single quarter. And I'm a doctor, not a lifelong politician. So when I entered this race, We had no war chest, nothing, and we've outraised every Democratic candidate. This last quarter, we outraised Mr. Ramaswamy, and we did so with an average gift of $29. We crashed our Secretary of State website because it couldn't take this many people giving. And 95% of our gifts were under $100. So this is a movement of people exhausted by this, and they're longing for good public servants again.
Yeah, you talk about the exhaustion that I think so many of us feel. And Vivek really, I think, embodies the chaos of this administration to a large degree. What are you hearing on the ground from both sides about that? I mean, he really is a culture warrior, and he's a billionaire who represents, anyone who has $1 billion clearly doesn't understand affordability. You might think it's a soundbite.
I think it's uniquely him. I think we have known beneficent people and people who do long to be public servants. It is very clear, I think, to Ohioans that my opponent isn't just out of touch. I mean, we joke, we have a meme here in Ohio that he literally flies in like an Air Force One, which is, I think, how he ran out of all his money and had to self-fund himself after we outraised him. He wrote a check for $25 million, obviously. He's always going to be able to do that. But he flies from places like, Columbus to Cincinnati or to Akron in a jet. And we've famously been going around in my old Jeep Wrangler, listening to people every step of the way. But I keep saying he's not just out of touch. He's out for himself. And quite frankly, he is a danger to Ohio, and he's a danger to this country, because we all know his sights are just to sort of use Ohio as a stepping stone to try to run for president again. When you love Ohio as I do, and I'm an Ohio girl through and through, we talk about my childhood. I grew up in Youngstown, very rough childhood, frequent flyer and children's services, a lot of abuse and neglect. So I know, what it's like to be hungry. I know what it's like to not have the heat on. I lived in a tent in the middle of winter as a kid. It is something that I've been fighting for. I'm 60 years old, and my entire profession and the type of doctor I am is about community health and well-being, state's health, nation's health. And I've been solving problems of Ohio my whole life. Obviously, in COVID, I ran, our response alongside a Republican governor, Governor Mike DeWine. We are a leader in the nation on that. When you love Ohio, you don't move your business to Texas right before running for a governor. You don't make your money doing pump and dump schemes at the affordability of people and pensions. You don't say things like Medicaid and Medicare are mistakes when we have rural hospitals collapsing. We have people going an hour and 15 minutes now to deliver a baby. We have babies being born roadside in Ohio. You don't say that affording everyday life, from housing to childcare to your electric bill to property taxes, is a buzzword, when everyone I meet is really talking about just how are they going to make it to the next thing. And this is everyday Ohioans struggling, our kids struggling to be able to afford the things of everyday life that we all long for. So my opponent just is frankly out of touch.
Yeah, and I know your background, which you talked about, is such a contrast to his. And you had to work your way through college and medical school. And right now, there are a lot of parents out there that are looking at high gas prices and healthcare premiums, and the idea of being able to afford college for their kids is slipping out of reach. And yet you have your opponent, Ramaswamy, and Donald Trump, who keep talking about affordability as a scam. What are you hearing on the campaign trail from Ohioans about that?
Yeah, I think I'm looking forward to pointing out a lifetime and a career of things that look very scammy to me. When you run a business where your mom does the phase 3 drug trials on an Alzheimer's drug and pump it up and then dump it, to me, that's the misuse of the word scam. I think that people are working harder than they ever have. It does not add up. One of the things that my opponent has said, amongst the many things he says that sort of stun not just Ohioans, but quite frankly, our business community and other entities, is he says things like that college, our community colleges and universities need consolidated. He wants to give a complete elimination of income tax. We're already very, very low in Ohio. The Republican governor has said we don't need to lower it anymore. He says reckless things like just eliminate all property taxes. Like basically he would end our state budget when that pays for our schools and our public safety officers, first responders, mental health, disabilities, on and on. It's reckless. It's clear he doesn't understand what it means to lead what I've been trained to lead and have led and worked with 5 different governors in various ways over my career. He just doesn't understand it. When he said the remarks, he wanted to consolidate our colleges, all I could think was our Republican governor way back, Governor Rhodes, was a person who made these colleges within reach of the citizens. I was able to go to an accelerated BSMD program at Youngstown State University, but it was a consortium between Kent State, Akron, and Youngstown. They built 1 med school instead of 3 med schools. And I was able to work 3 jobs and commute and be able to turn my life around and work hard and have it pay off. That was the dream of doing this. And so he has sort of recklessly said, in order to give more tax breaks to people at $1 million plus, he was going to get rid of these things that, 1 in 8 jobs at Ohio are in communities. It's the #1 engine in many communities. So it is these policies that just show Ohioans that he doesn't understand what it is like. And I know people are ready for change.
My friend Mike Morley grew up in Youngstown. He was a Democrat. Yeah. And he has so much love for that town. I think it's hard for a lot of us to understand Youngstown. I know you only have a couple of minutes.
Oh, thank you.
Like everyone who comes from Youngstown loves Youngstown.
Yeah.
What is it about Youngstown?
I have a theory life originated there in the Mahoning River Valley, but crawled out. My grandfather came here from the old country to escape persecution. And the best jobs when the streets were paved with gold, remember hearing that in Europe a lot, and left everything behind and lost relatives. He came to the steel mills. He could get a good paying job. You could have a middle-class way of life, 2 cars, food, a great pension. And that allowed the next generations. It's what we all dream, the American dream. And Youngstown was that kind of city in the heyday. And obviously we know it collapsed when steel collapsed on the famous Black Friday. But one of the things I learned there, when I told you that we didn't care where you came from, there was a sense of justice growing up, of fairness. You didn't pick on a kid who was smaller than you, or you were going to get picked on. There's just a street sense. It's funny, Ed O'Neill, who did Married with Children and Modern Family, the actor, he and I grew up on the exact same streets. And so we talk about this a lot. I feel very grateful that I learned that public service and how we all work together, something I've done my entire career. I've always had to work with people on both sides of the aisle to solve the wicked hard problems. And I think this duty, almost, this sense of fairness is just deep in me. So I hope that's what your friend carried away as I did. And the thing is, we're a very independent thinking state. People see Ohio as red. The truth is we are slightly pink. We are mostly independent. But what we want for and long for is to end this corruption. I'm fighting to make Ohio affordable again for every Ohioan and a great quality of life. I'm fighting to end a very broken, very corrupt state house. You mentioned that I received a profile on courage, honor of a lifetime, Carolyn Kennedy and her son, Jack Calling. Profiles in Courage is about not looking the other way. This is the big theme of my childhood. I remember on Youngstown, a couple who would pull my brother and I up on their front porch and feed us breakfast because they knew we were hungry. Mm-hmm. I am refusing to look the other way. Ohioans, that's what I'm asking of Ohioans. We must join together and link arms, refuse to look the other way in this moment. And we're going to tell Mr. Ramaswamy in November, you cannot buy this state. You can't buy Ohio, and you can't buy us. That is what we're seeing. It does not know party. People want good people. I stood up to a person who did the largest scandal in Ohio's history. He wanted orders during COVID that frankly would have killed people. I couldn't sign it, but I kept advising the governor, Republican governor, but I didn't sign those orders. And 2 weeks later, he was arrested in a $60 million bribe scheme, largest in the country, really. And so we are living in a moment where, no one's coming to save us but us. But if enough of us realize the power of the people again, which is what we're seeing, we are winning. We are neck and neck or ahead in every single poll in this race. Again, lifetime of being a public servant, trained to run all of government, ran it all in COVID. I've worked with both sides of the aisle, but my last election was in high school. And we are doing this because the people are ready for change. We are setting records in fundraising, but we could use everyone's help out there. Please come learn more about this campaign. actonforgovernor.com. It is about when enough of us push back, and when Ohio goes, so goes the nation. So this is a vital, vital race. Ohio is the flip opportunity of governor's races. actonforgovernor.com. Love to have you be a part of this, so that we can beat these special interests, corruption, and really probably one of the best bad guys in the country. So, and when we do that in Ohio, and we're going to go back after, we're going to end our supermajority this time, get a veto back. We're going to turn around and end gerrymandering in Ohio in 27. And then together we're going to really build back the kind of state we all deserve.
Dr. Acton, thank you for taking time. And I hope that both you and your running mate, David Pepper, old friend of Lincoln Square, will definitely come back and talk with us about your campaign.
Thank you. Thank you. Please do. David Pepper, the Laboratories of Autocracy, all about this kind of corruption, and the best enemy of corruption I could have is a partner. So thank you.
We're big fans.
Yeah. Thank you both. Be well, everyone.